We talk about how we can build better games, how games can be used not only as entertainment, but for education, politics, even medicine. We talk about the game community, about game schools, game companies, and the business of making games. If that sounds good to you, then join us each week for extra credits, because games matter.
Games matter. Good games matter. Not all games. Because not all games are made equally. Most games are made for the simple fact of ripping you off, collecting extra money from you, turning players into payers, reoccurring spenders, chasing quote-unquote whales. This statement is too broad a stroke, painting all games as some sort of worthy endeavor, when at the end of the day, the gaming industry is like any other corpulent pig, overfed, fat, and looking for a little extra. The current state of affairs in the gaming industry is this. Do we have an IP that's popular? Yes. Can we add microtransactions? Yes. Can we turn it into an online game? Hopefully. Can we focus on recurring spenders? Yes. If there's one thing Star Wars Battlefront from EA has taught us, it's just how little they give a shit about the game and how much more they care about hype training it and trying to milk you for every dime. Maybe if the game publishers spent a little less on, let's move into the video that actually is the culprit of all this before I go on my soapbox.
Why are all of these $60 games trying to sell me loot boxes?
Because, you jackass, loot boxes have proven to be extremely profitable for Overwatch. You know how much money Overwatch made within 10 to 11 months? $1 billion. From loot boxes alone.
$100 billion.
That's why loot boxes are there, little babies. And all the other gaming publishers are seeing these endless amounts of revenue. And they just can't help themselves. They've got gold fever. They've got loot box fever. It's the Bozeman Trail. And EA, Activision, and every other butt sniffer and their mother is out here looking to strike that gold vein. You don't believe me, you can ask Jim Sterling. The dude's been bitching about this shit longer than I have.
Why are all these $60 games selling me season passes for their DLC?
Because sometimes that cut content can be used later to sell back to the consumer for a little bit of extra profit. Yum yum, profit.
Why are all of these $60 games including microtransactions? What?
We just went over this with loot box because it's, oh my god, dude, you can't. The microtransactions themselves are ridiculous for the fact that people are spending crazy amounts of money on microtransactions. You see much a key is in PUBG? $2.50 for a fucking key. But the loot box itself is 68 cents. Any way you slice it, Bluehole's getting paid. I'm watching videos of people who are more popular on YouTube and Twitch than me, shamelessly spending hundreds of dollars to open loot boxes, and people sit there and cheer about it. Because it's a money maker, fucknut. Don't sit here and try to turn what they're doing into some sort of necessity to keep themselves alive. They need these microtransactions as bad as fucking Marie Antoinette needed another specially fitted gown that cost a poor French taxpayer money.
Why are all of these $60 games trying to sell me DLC on day one?
Because they know you'll buy it. They know you'll buy it. That's why these game publishers put out special day one DLC for Amazon, Walmart, GameStop, so on and so forth. Because they know there are people that are actually completionists. And completionists will go and buy every version of this game because they have to have those skins. And you know what's sad? That those skins won't matter in a year when the next game comes out. So it's like you're paying for digital goods that are worthless. You can't resell them. You can't wear them yourself. And if everybody abandons the game for the new Destiny 2, you'll be running around the raid by yourself wearing your gold wings like a douchebag. Because no one gives a fucking for its old ass.
But the fundamental question being asked is the same. Why are they trying to make me pay more than $60 for this game? Today, we are going to answer that question.
There's no point to the rest of this video. I just answered all your questions.
AAA games should not cost $60.
I don't care that AAA games cost $60. And when you really think about it, the AAA games cost more than $60. If you count in the game, if they have a season pass, God help you if they do multiple seasons. What else is there? real money trading. Look at the shark cards. Do you know how much money Grand Theft Auto made? Do you know how much money they made from the shark cards? Over $1 billion. Over $1 billion. You want to sit here and tell me that the gaming industry is hurting for money anymore?
And I'm going to spend the rest of this video explaining why. The price for a AAA game was set at $60 right around the launch of HD consoles, the Xbox 360 and the PS3.
I remember that, and I wasn't really affected by it much. I thought it sucked, but I saw it as a necessity. The boost in visual fidelity, the change of graphics, the change of the technology itself, everything was just moved forward. Made sense.
That was around 2005, and the price hasn't shifted again since, but the value of the US dollar certainly has. The rate of inflation over the last decade has averaged out to roughly 2% per year. According to the best figures I can find, that means that the value of goods has inflated 25.34% since we started selling games for $60. And let's just round that down to a flat 25% to keep the math simple. So,
what games does this YouTube channel sell? Because they sell any of them, I advise no one buy them.
due to inflation alone, AAA games should be selling for $75.
Got the fucking not. Could you imagine if games were $75 now? Uninspired stories, sometimes pushing social justice narratives, because frankly, game developers seem to be scared to death of these people. And most of them don't even really play video games, so what the fuck is your problem? Think about the microtransactions, think about the gameplay. Do you notice how many games are just getting easier and easier? Dragon Ball Z Fighter is a perfect example. I was expecting like Guilty Gear X level combinations and super moves that require you to really get your shit together. Not anymore, baby. You could just mash the Y button and still do a super move if you have a charge up. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's flashy and great for the viewer, but for somebody who's used to more complicated games, it's kind of hard to wrap my mind around not hitting other buttons to make some sort of combination. I mean, yeah, you can do high-low or something like that, but I keep fucking it up.
Obviously, inflation isn't the only factor in play here. AAA games are all competing to have the best-looking game on the market, and that graphical arms race gets way more expensive with each new console generation. And sure.
Now, there's an issue right there. Have you noticed the graphical fidelity between PlayStation 3 and, say, 4, or Xbox 360 and Xbox One? Isn't that super big? I mean, it's because I play on PC, I'm not noticing this huge generational leap for me personally. You know, because I built my first PC around the time the PlayStation 3 was still around. And I obviously still have it now that PlayStation 4 is a thing. And I'm not seeing this super amazing jump in most games. Yes, it's in some, but it's not like super duper mind-blowing. My second one is the underlying fact that the gaming industry is trying to make up for the issues of their games being stale, being hollow, being empty, being uninspired, where they rely mainly on the hype train. Most games are just basically hyped to be this amazing experience, and 9 times out of 10 it falls flat. Not to mention the constant downgrades of visual fidelity and gameplay mechanics, because one minute they promised it, the next minute they couldn't make the deadline, and it's gone. So the trump card they have is making everything look as good as possible. I hear the term from console gamers thrown around a lot, graphical whores. And honest to God, if you're a graphics whore, I don't know why the fuck you'd be on a console in the first place. I'm not trying to throw jabs, I'm just saying. That's like someone going, I live for speed. But you have the chance to get a Bugatti Veyron, instead you buy, I don't know, a Camaro. You see my point? The overabundance of reliance on visual fidelity is one of the biggest problems of the gaming industry. Because visual fidelity is only one aspect of a good game. Visual fidelity can only go so far if the game lacks substance. If the game lacks a good story or good gameplay mechanics. A perfect example is Metal Gear Solid 5. The story was shit, but the gameplay was great. And the graphics were pretty good. Was it the overall greatest thing I ever saw? But it was pretty good. Point being, you can't just rely on graphics if everything else isn't there.
Well, we have found a lot of clever efficiencies along the way to reduce costs. I mean, heck, we treat third-party game engines like middleware now, and that saves tons. But even with those savings, I would estimate that AAA games cost somewhere between 3 and 4 times as much to make as they did back in 2005. So, does that mean games should actually be costing somewhere between $225 and $300? Fortunately, no. Things aren't quite that dire. It's pretty hard to pin down exact numbers on this, but the game-playing audience is a lot bigger than it was in 2005, too.
The same direction. That something is digital distribution. They're spending far less on the actual production of the physical products that they sell us, and by significant amounts. The 30% Valve takes is definitely less than the cost of putting a box on a Walmart shelf, especially when you consider that some of these publishers don't pay that base 30% cost that an indie developer would. This is point number one in my contention of the idea that games are too expensive to make. The production costs have fallen in the last 7 years by quite a bit, an average of about 35%, with the notable exception of what Activision did last year, which was the King acquisition. Incidentally, all of Activision's numbers jumped with that acquisition. We're making the claim that games are getting too expensive to make, and thus we need microtransactions to see a 35% average decline in the amount publishers are spending on the cost of goods sold. Kind of hurts the claim a wee bit, especially since the cost of goods sold is an enormous part of the overall budget. The next piece that interested me a great deal, and I have a couple of graphs for this one as well, is that for the most part, the cost of research and development has remained relatively stagnant over the past 7 years. Again, this is adjusted for inflation as well. We do see the King spike for Activision in 2016, and Electronic Arts is even trending downwards on what it spends on development every year. Marketing is actually a similar story, with relatively stagnant progression, except that the Activision showed itself off here, and the marketing budget was enormous. By now, those in the audience who are interested in or interact with the exciting world of corporate finance on a day-to-day basis may have noticed that I'm just going down the balance sheet. This is all public information, and those of you in the know will be wanting to point out, Tarmac, you can't compare all of these things like this. There are too many unknowns. And you'd be right. I'm not doing a direct comparison, especially because Activision has a December fiscal year end while the other two end in March. Rather, what I'm doing is looking for trends. What we've seen so far is that year over year, on average, cost of production is going down. And despite any small increase on occasion in development and marketing, that reduced cost of production is going down at a much faster rate. Well, if you were going to claim that games are too expensive to make, seeing some of these costs dropping faster than corresponding development costs should be rising is a little bit odd.
And thus, one of the bigger issues.
God damn it.
I dare say that around the time of PlayStation 2, 3, Dreamcast, Xbox 360, the gaming industry wasn't as popular as it was. And at that time, game devs were trying to fight to prove to the rest of the media industry that gaming was viable. Before, gaming was looked at for little kids, and if you gamed and you were over like 10, people made fun of you. I remember being 16 and having girls and, football jocks make fun of me and my friends because we still play video games. Now look at it. Now look at how things have changed. How accepted it is. How esports is a thing. Figured it happens after I leave. But point being, games like Shenmue, which pushed the barrier, very, very story-driven. Yes, the voice actors were bad in the American version, but the story was so enthralling you didn't pay attention to that. The gameplay mechanics were next-gen. In fact, a lot of the things they did were revolutionary. Everything you see in games now was kind of originated by Shenmue. And that's another sad thing. How much has the industry grown since that game came out over 10 years ago? Not much at all. Now that there's a larger installment base of people in the gaming industry, and now that gaming is seen as a respectable, viable form of media and income, there also comes a problem with massive sectors, and that's mediocrity. When you really think about it, think about your favorite bands. Think about how great their first albums were. Think about how shit they are now. A perfect example would be U2. Look at U2. Look what happened at the time of Sunday Play Sunday with Joshua Trees and now. That's what the gaming industry is. The gaming industry is now Bono. Alright? You look back, you remember what Bono stood for in the beginning, and now you look at what Bono is now, and you're fucking tired of that guy. With this mass acceptance and appeal, there's just a lot of people who are willing to take whatever comes, and they see flashy trailers, and they just get hyped. Hashtag hype. Hashtag E3. Can't wait for this. This is amazing. I just had to stop following Fallout 4 on Twitter, because every time I turned around, they would retweet somebody talking about how Fallout 4 is their favorite Fallout game. And I thought to myself, either A, play no other Fallout games, or B, you have the mental span of a beast, and all the previous Fallout games are too hard and too annoying for you, and it required too much thought. You just like to bang bang, put on my armor and kill a death claw in the first 5 minutes of the game level of bullshit. So now the gaming industry knows they have that going on. They can do what they want.
A lot more customers to sell to, which helps to make up for that higher production cost, and can result in even bigger profits if you manage to make a huge hit.
You don't even have to make a huge hit, for God's sakes. Look at Destiny 2. According to the analysis of Newzoo, the AAA video game industry made an estimated $116 billion in revenue in 2017. It's an adjustment from their previous assessment that they'd make $108 billion. They made $8 billion more than they anticipated. And for the year of 2018, which is this year, they are predicting they will make $125 billion or more. Do not be misled into thinking the gaming industry is making money. If anything doesn't make money, it goes away. It leaves. Look what happened to the DeLorean. The Back to the Future car. It made no money. The DeLorean's gone. You can order one now, custom made, but I ain't dropping $55,000 on a fucking DeLorean.
Unfortunately, when you're losing on that higher number of sales to make a profit, if your game flops, well, you're going to be losing an impossibly large, possibly studio-sinking amount of money. But
when a game flops, the only place you can place the blame is on the publisher and the devs. The perfect example is Mass Effect Andromeda. We all know what happened there. The alpha looked better than the finished game. Because they were trying to do some procedurally generated worlds because everybody was blowing a nut over, what was it, No Man's Sky? Everybody thought No Man's Sky was going to be this revolutionary game, and I called it. I said it wasn't what they thought it was. They'll call it Star Citizen for console players. Long story short, another game did really good hype, dropped dead, and EA saw how poorly that worked for Star Citizen, and then pulled the ripcord on it and left the devs 2 years to fix everything else. There were multitudes of other problems that I'm not getting into. There are videos you can check for that, because I ain't got the time to break down everything in this sort of thing.
since we're just focusing on what the average retail price of a game should be, let's just ignore that increased risk factor for now. Based on what we've seen firsthand working in this industry, much of which is under NDA, unfortunately, if I had to make a gut estimate, and understand this really is just a rough guess, I would say that the actual retail price of a modern AAA game, without any additional ongoing revenue sources to support it, should probably be as high as $85 to $90 new. Now, understandably, that number freaks the industry out.
But they know nobody will pay. I mean, come on. What's going on in the AAA industry? All the nickel and diamond, all the little sneaky blocks to have in-game systems designed to prey on people who have addictive personalities or who are interested in buying a modernization gun or something like that, to sort of push them into making the purchase. Doesn't that just scream to you as a company with no morals? Doesn't it just scream to you that they have no value as a consumer, that their end game is money? Has The Witcher 3 taught anyone anything? I can't find the article from PC Gamer or anywhere else because, sadly enough, I didn't think I would look at it again. I just looked at it like a month ago. Witcher 3 continues to make money long after it's released. The last time I looked, CD Projekt Red's Witcher 3 made $250 million, and that was in March. And I was checking out an article like a month ago from PC Gamer that passed some other milestone where they made some crazy amount of money. Because frankly, gamers like the DLC was actually DLC. It wasn't cut content. The expansion packs for Blood and Wine and Hearts of Stone were genuinely fucking good. Their season pass DLC was garbage. So much so that version 1.8 or 9 just recently came out, and it had better content than the season pass. That's sad. You look at Destiny's first expansion pack. Something of a side. And how many people so much studio saying they were done with the game and they left. They uninstalled. They were pissed off at Bungie and Activision. Most of these big games, the dev, maybe the most likely the publisher pushing them to do this, but everything is so buy the numbers, buy the book, do the things here, follow the spec quest there, shoot this guy here, and bing bang boom, $25 season pass, take it. If games were $75, you can't honest to God sit here and think that the gaming industry wouldn't sit there, smile at you and go, okay, we won't do anything again, and then before you know it, there would be expansion packs. There would be microtransactions. Everything Jim Sterling said. You have to remember the industry right now is like the over now. Alright? It's like ESP. If you've ever seen anything ESP's done recently, he cries about losing his house, his fans make the money, he doesn't lose his house. And now he's telling them he might have more tax cover. It's only been a month since the last crisis was averted.